Welcome to the debate. Imagine you have a personal assistant who has worked for you your entire life, right? And this assistant is, well, brilliantly attentive. They know exactly how you like your coffee. They know when you're too exhausted to make complex decisions. And they even know the precise moment to suggest a detour on your commute to avoid a massive traffic spike.
Sounds like a dream, honestly.
Right? We all want that level of seamless, frictionless support.
We do, but imagine that while this amazing assistant is handing you your perfectly brewed coffee, they're also meticulously logging your eye movements.
Okay.
They're measuring the exact millisecond duration of your pauses in conversation, tracking your heart rate, and reporting every single vulnerability back to a global server architecture. And that system uses the data to predict exactly how to manipulate your next purchase. Suddenly, that convenience feels less like a service and a lot more like a magnifying glass.
That is definitely the darker framing. And today we are unpacking exactly that, the ultimate modern trade-off. Does the extreme technological convenience of artificial intelligence justify its constant algorithmic observation of our daily routines?
Exactly. Are we unknowingly trading our psychological autonomy for just a better streaming recommendation?
Right. And crucially, we're going to debate the solution here. Discutem-se usuários devem restringir o uso de ferramentas de personalização para ter liberdade. Wait, let me phrase that in English for our listeners. Must users actively restrict these personalization tools and add deliberate friction to their digital lives to remain free?
That is the core question.
I'll start by arguing that yes, algorithmic observation provides unprecedented convenience by drastically reducing the cognitive cost of our daily decisions. Furthermore, I believe we can maintain our autonomy through active awareness and critical habits, rather than strictly abandoning the personalization that makes these tools so incredibly valuable.
Well, I come at it from a very different way. I argue that the convenience simply does not justify the constant invisible surveillance. These systems primarily optimize for corporate goals, like, engagement and conversion rates rather than user welfare.
Which we'll get into.
Right. Because of this massive asymmetry, where the platform knows far more about you than you could ever know about it, I firmly believe users must actively restrict these personalization tools. Adding deliberate friction into our digital routines is the only way to genuinely reclaim our freedom.
Okay, let's lay out our positions clearly, starting with the reality of cognitive load. Let's just be honest about what it takes to get through a single day right now. When my alarm goes off at 6 a.m., I simply do not have the biological or mental bandwidth to consciously calculate the optimal route to work based on historical traffic data, weather patterns, and construction schedules.
Sure, nobody does.
Exactly. I want my map app to just tell me. Human beings have always relied on mental shortcuts, heuristics, because deliberation is metabolically costly. We literally don't have the energy to consciously analyze every micro-decision. AI observation isn't some science fiction dystopia where a red-eyed machine is glaring at you. It's a practical background utility.
But is it just a utility?
I mean, it processes our digital exhaust to make life easier. Think about the tangible daily benefits. A phone reminding you of a critical meeting because it scanned your email, or a medical algorithm adjusting your wearable settings based on your sleep cycle.
Right, but
These are profound benefits. They preserve our mental energy for the decisions that actually matter, like our families, our careers, our passions. My position is that we do not need to cripple these tools to remain free individuals. Algorithmic influence is now just an environmental factor. Autonomy isn't achieved by living in an analog cave. It's preserved through critical habits, diversifying our information, and just understanding how the environment operates.
okay, that paints a wonderfully benign picture, but I think it completely ignores the fundamental mechanics of what is actually happening beneath the glass of our screens.
How so?
This observation isn't a passive database, just checking boxes. It is a living prediction system. The AI does not just describe your past behavior, it estimates what you will do next. And to do that, it tracks thousands of sub-perceptual signals.
Which are just data points.
But look at what those data points are. The exact moment you scrolled past an item, The fraction of a second you hesitated on a headline, the precise cadence of your typing late at night. These models turn those traces into a highly dimensional profile that maps out deeper tendencies and psychological vulnerabilities, things you don't even consciously recognize yourself.
I think vulnerability is a strong word there.
It's the accurate word. And why? We have to look at the underlying incentive structures. These algorithms are explicitly designed to maximize business objectives. They optimize for time on site, engagement metrics, and conversion funnels. They implicitly learn to pull psychological levers to keep you hooked.
To offer you what you want, you mean?
Now, to offer you what keeps you clicking, because this system is inherently asymmetrical, giving server farms absolute insight into your impulses while offering you a completely opaque interface. Mere awareness is a deeply insufficient defense. A well-tuned algorithmic profile quickly becomes a cage of familiarity. Therefore, true freedom requires actively restricting these tools, breaking the predictive loop, and introducing friction.
Okay, I think we need to dive right into the core of this trade-off between convenience and coercion, because there's a fascinating psychological dimension at play here.
Go ahead.
Personalization is so effective because modern AI tailors its interfaces to the mental states it infers from your context. Let's say the system detects that you are a tired user based on your interaction speed at 10 p.m. In response, it offers you content that demands less cognitive effort.
Exactly my point.
Wait, but if you're researching a complex financial decision and it seamlessly presents simplified financing options because you're tired, I look at that and I see a highly optimized service. I see an assistant that knows when I'm too exhausted to read a dense academic paper and offers me light entertainment instead. That is the very definition of convenience. Why must we inherently frame a system that adapts to our mental states as a threat?
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Please do.
You're framing this algorithmic adaptation as empathy. The system does not have empathy. It has optimization algorithms. Let's look under the hood for a second. This is an active reinforcement learning environment. Your attention is the mathematical reward function.
Sure, it wants engagement.
Right, so when the AI detects that you're tired, it isn't offering you low-effort content to help you relax and gently transition to sleep. It is offering you low-effort content so that you keep scrolling, so that your session duration increases, and so it can serve you 3 more targeted advertisements.
Well, advertising is the business model, yes.
But it goes further than that. If a model realizes that serving you highly polarized, anxiety-inducing news at 11:30 p.m. increases your scroll time by 40%, it literally rewires its own parameters to keep feeding you anxiety. It doesn't care that you have to work in the morning. It's optimizing a mathematical curve completely oblivious to your actual well-being.
I mean, not all algorithms push anxiety.
But they automate psychological triggers at scale. We aren't just talking about a helpful countdown timer on a shoe sale. We are talking about artificial urgency perfectly tailored to the exact millisecond usually experience impulse control failure. That's not a service. That is extraction.
That's an interesting point, though. I would definitely frame it differently. Yes, the architecture relies on prediction, behavioral data, and optimization. But let's not pretend optimization is some uniquely malicious, modern invention.
It's the scale that's modern.
But we live in a physical world built on the exact same principles. The grocery store puts the dairy aisle at the far back, so you have to walk past 70 yards of promotional displays.
True.
A television network programs light sitcoms late at night when audiences are exhausted, specifically to keep them watching commercials. The mechanisms of social proof, scarcity, and anchoring, these are fundamental realities of human commerce and communication.
I'm not denying that.
Right, so the AI is simply doing this mathematically, at scale, and with more precision. And honestly, the convenience we gain, the fact that the system filters out millions of irrelevant, useless options to show us what we actually want to see or buy, is a massive net positive. It drastically reduces friction in an increasingly complex world.
Okay, but let's extend your grocery store analogy to what's actually happening digitally. A physical grocery store doesn't follow you home. It doesn't monitor how fast your pupils dilate when you look at a specific brand of cereal on the shelf. And it certainly doesn't dynamically alter the price of that cereal in real time right as you reach for the box, just because its historical data knows you skipped breakfast and are feeling highly impulsive.
Dynamic pricing is a bit of an extreme example, but I get your point.
But it happens. The asymmetry in power here is absolute. The scale and the continuous, invisible nature of the observation fundamentally change the reality of the interaction. The digital system improves continuously. Every single interaction, every tap, swipe, and hesitation provides feedback.
Right, which makes it a better tool.
Or a better manipulator. If you ignore one recommendation, the model instantly adjusts its weights. Over time, it's no longer just observing you. It is actively learning how to steer you. It identifies reoccurring emotional triggers that completely bypass your rational mind. We've seen documented evidence of platforms nudging user behavior in ways that even their own machine learning engineers didn't fully anticipate.
Because the models are complex.
Because they amplify polarized content purely because rage correlates with longer session times. The convenience is just the bait. The hook is behavioral modification. Which brings us directly to the question of autonomy and authenticity. Look, I am not arguing that the influence doesn't exist, nor am I dismissing the power of the algorithms. I'm arguing that we can maintain our autonomy by recognizing it.
But is recognition enough?
Yes. Recognizing that AI influences your choices is the foundational step toward regaining agency. When you explicitly understand that a recommendation engine is structured to maximize engagement, you can pause, reflect, and make a conscious choice rather than an automatic reaction. Awareness transforms invisible manipulation into a visible, manageable environmental factor.
I just don't think it's that easy.
Look at it this way. If I know a massive billboard on the highway is trying to sell me a car, I haven't lost my free will just by looking at the advertisement. I can evaluate the claim. I know what it's trying to do. Why can't we apply that exact same personal and civic strategy to our algorithmic feeds?
That's a compelling argument. But have you considered the profound chilling effect this constant observation has on human behavior?
Chilling effect in what sense?
When people know they're being observed, even indirectly, they adapt their behavior. They click differently, they search differently, they self-censor, they present a highly curated version of themselves online.
Well, everyone curates themselves online.
Right, but if you are constantly modifying your actions because you know a massive algorithmic profile is constantly assessing and categorizing you, that deeply compromises your authenticity. You aren't just evaluating a billboard on a highway, you are living inside the billboard, and the billboard is judging how you walk, how you talk, and what you think about in the dark.
Wow. I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning at all because adapting to our environment is a core human trait.
It's different when a machine is judging you.
Is it? We behave differently in a quiet library than we do at a chaotic football game. We present ourselves differently to our boss during a performance review than we do to our best friend over dinner. Contextual adaptation isn't a loss of authenticity. It's social intelligence.
But you're adapting to people in those scenarios.
If users adapt their digital behavior because they're highly aware of the algorithm, that is actually proof of their autonomy. They are making a conscious, strategic choice about what signals they want to send into the system to curate their own experience. The line between helpful assistance and surveillance might be thin, but a technology-literate user is still the one navigating that line.
But you are assuming they can consciously control the signals they're sending, and that's a huge assumption.
I think we have more control than you're giving us credit for. The organization has nearly infinite insight into your behavior, while you have almost zero insight into how the algorithm works. You say users can send intentional signals, but the AI is feasting on the unintentional signals.
Okay, fair.
You cannot consciously control the speed of your scroll. You cannot control the fraction of a second your thumb hovers over an emotionally charged image before moving on. The system detects subperceptual patterns that are completely invisible to the conscious mind. But again, it's just trying to figure out what you like.
It is estimating your underlying intentions with enough statistical accuracy to be psychologically persuasive before you even realize you want something. Because you cannot outthink a server farm that processes millions of parameters a second, awareness alone is completely inadequate. It traps you in a cage of familiarity. It repeatedly shows you the same kinds of ideas, the same aesthetic, the same viewpoints, slowly narrowing your exposure and shaping your worldview without you ever noticing the walls closing in.
Okay, let's assume you're right, and awareness isn't a strong enough shield. What is the actual solution here? How do we respond to this environment if we can't just think our way out of it? You argue that we must actively restrict these tools.
Exactly. We have to sever the data pipeline. Users must look for ways to reduce personalization aggressively wherever possible. We need to explicitly disable ad personalization in our operating systems.
Which a lot of people do now, to be fair.
Sure, but it needs to be broader. We need to routinely clear tracking cookies, utilize privacy-focused browsers, and lock down data sharing settings across all major platforms. But most importantly, we have to deliberately add friction back into our daily digital lives.
Adding friction. You are arguing we should intentionally make our own lives harder and less efficient?
Yes, absolutely. We need to set deliberate time delays for online purchases to kill the impulse buy. We must turn off autoplay on every single video and audio platform. We should abandon algorithmic feeds entirely and choose manually curated chronological feeds.
That sounds exhausting.
These steps are mathematically necessary to break the automatic patterns that the AI relies on. If the system's power comes from a seamless, continuous feedback loop of observation, prediction, and reward, the only way to protect your autonomy is to introduce turbulence into that loop. You have to break the machine's line of sight by putting hurdles between your impulse and your action.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. If we completely disable ad personalization, if we turn off algorithmic discovery feeds and constantly purge our histories, we are effectively crippling the technology.
It's a trade-off.
We are taking a Ferrari and slashing the tires. We strip away the immense value and convenience that we discussed earlier. We go back to a digital world that is noisy, irrelevant, static, and completely overwhelming. The solution isn't to burn down the library because you don't like the librarian.
It's not a library, it's a casino.
Even so, we can achieve autonomy without breaking the personalization engines. We do it by deliberately diversifying our content exposure. We corroborate information from multiple independent sources. We build personal systems that preserve our capacity to reflect.
But
let me finish this thought. If I let a music app analyze my listening habits to recommend a new playlist, I get the incredible convenience of discovering great new artists I'd never find on my own. I don't lose my freedom because I can still actively choose to search for something completely different whenever I want.
choosing to search for a different genre of music is incredibly low stakes. But what about when the system is artificially narrowing your exposure to complex political viewpoints?
Well, sure, politics is trickier.
What about when it's preying on your deep-seated financial anxieties by feeding you emotionally charged, catastrophic headlines? Because its model knows that's exactly what keeps your eyes glued to the screen late at night. The mental health considerations here are massive.
I don't disagree that mental health is a factor.
Constant exposure to attention-maximizing algorithms contributes heavily to anxiety, compulsive usage, and lowered satisfaction with offline life. I have to ask, is the internet actually overwhelming without algorithms? Or have we just lost the cognitive muscle required to curate our own interests?
That's a little condescending to the average user, don't you think?
No, it's realistic. You cannot just critically reflect your way out of a system engineered by thousands of the smartest behavioral scientists on Earth to bypass your critical faculties. The friction is a necessary mechanical defense mechanism. By turning off autoplay, you are forcing your physical brain to make an active, conscious choice to watch another video, rather than letting the machine make the default choice for you. You are reclaiming the physical space between impulse and action.
Look, I completely agree that the space between impulse and action is sacred, but I believe we can empower users to command that space through education and demanding transparent design, rather than demanding the individual manually dismantle their digital conveniences every single day.
Education isn't enough when the interface is rigged.
Which is why ethical product design is key. It means building interfaces that make alternative choices highly visible and offering clear, accessible opt-outs. It means regulators setting strict standards for algorithmic transparency and requiring algorithmic impact assessments.
Regulators?
Yes. If the underlying organizations improve the transparency of the systems, users won't need to arbitrarily add friction because the environment will be designed to favor user autonomy by default. We fix the architecture. We don't just tell the user to put on a blindfold.
Waiting for massive tech corporations to voluntarily prioritize your psychological autonomy over their quarterly profit margins is a highly dangerous game.
I said regulated, not voluntary.
Even so, these systems are designed with goals, and those goals inherently belong to the platform. Until regulators step in, and let's be honest, regulatory bodies are notoriously slow and often technologically illiterate. The burden falls entirely, squarely on the individual.
That's a pessimistic view.
The reality is mechanical. If you do not actively manage, restrict, and obfuscate the behavioral data you emit, the AI will quietly study your micro-behaviors at scale and shape the digital world around you to extract your attention. You say we don't need to live in a cave, but if you don't build fences, the algorithm will build that cage of familiarity around you, and you'll be far too comfortable to realize you're locked in.
Let's summarize our positions as we look at the broader picture here. I maintain that the algorithmic observation of our daily routines, while complex, provides a profound level of technological convenience that is deeply valuable in our modern, fast-paced world. By understanding the underlying mechanisms of influence, how data is gathered, how predictions are made, and how interfaces are optimized, we can treat AI as an environmental force. We don't need to needlessly cripple our tech, add frustrating friction, or abandon personalization. Rather, we maintain our agency through conscious awareness, diversifying our sources, and treating algorithmic suggestions as helpful, time-saving heuristics rather than absolute directives.
And I maintain that this observation is an asymmetrical living prediction system that leverages thousands of subperceptual microbehaviors to optimize corporate objectives at the direct expense of user welfare. Because the influence is continuous, subtle, mathematically scaled, and targets our deepest psychological vulnerabilities, awareness is simply not enough of a shield. True autonomy in the digital age requires users to actively restrict personalization tools, disable tracking, and inject deliberate physical friction into their digital routines to break the predictive feedback loop.
You know, despite our very different approaches to the solution, it is clear we have a strong point of convergence today. We both entirely agree that the question is no longer whether artificial intelligence shapes our choices.
Oh, absolutely. It already does.
Right. The technology is seamless, constant, and deeply woven into our most intimate daily routines.
We definitely agree on that reality. Where we remain in continued disagreement is on where the immediate burden lies. Whether users must actively restrict these tools as a defensive necessity to protect their minds, or whether they can safely coexist with them through better awareness and eventual systemic regulatory reform.
Exactly. It brings us right back to that incredibly attentive, always watching personal assistant we talked about at the beginning. We all have to look at our own lives and decide how much of our daily friction we are willing to let them manage, and exactly how much of our psychological privacy we're willing to trade for that perfectly timed, frictionless cup of coffee. It leaves us with a critical question to examine in our own digital routines. Are the personalized algorithms in our lives genuinely serving our human goals, or are they merely amplifying corporate incentives?
A question we all need to answer for ourselves.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on The Debate.